Hey, what's up guys? Let's talk about how long your boxing gloves should last. So stay tuned. Hey, what's up guys? Carlo here, and today's video is going to be on one of the more frequently asked questions that I get, and that's how long your boxing gloves should last. Just your boxing gear in general. Now that's kind of a hard question to answer because it's not really a one-size-fits-all answer to that question, because there's several variables that goes into that. One of the main ones is going to be what the material of the glove is made of. If it's made out of genuine leather, like you see here with my Pro Series gloves. If it's made out of synthetic, as well as the kind of foam they use on the inside of the glove. If it's injected molded foam, if it's a layered foam with open and closed cell foam. So there's a couple variables with the actual quality of the gloves. Second would be how often you're using the gloves. Are you using them every day, 6 days a week, maybe one rest day? Maybe you're a pro level fighter, you're a high level amateur, maybe you're just a gym rat and you like to go to the gym and you work out all the time. So you're using it every day out of the week, and while you're at the gym, how many rounds on the heavy bag are you doing? Are you using a heavy bag that's super dense, like rock solid hard bag, which is gonna put a lot more wear and tear on the foam? How many rounds are you doing? Are you doing 12, 15 rounds just on the heavy bag? Are you hitting the mitts? Are you doing sparring? Are you hitting the double end bag? So there's a lot of variables that go into that as far as usage goes. And then lastly is kind of the forgotten step. And a lot of us do this, if not the vast majority of us do this, is the maintenance of our gloves. A lot of times you get done using your gloves, you've had a heavy training session, and you end up just tossing it into your duffel bag, and it's all super sweaty, you didn't really wipe it down, you didn't clean them, you just tossed it into your gym bag, just to get ready for the next day. So the next day you come back in the gym, you go back to work again, wash, rinse, repeat. So that's kind of the gist of what most people do with their gym equipment and their boxing gloves specifically, which that missing step is actually really detrimental to the life of your gear. You're really cutting the life of your gloves in half, especially if it's a genuine leather glove. And I'd say that the vast majority of gloves still are leather. A lot of fighters still prefer genuine leather. Now there's a lot more synthetics. Like you see here, I have these Sanibels. These are kind of like the same material that these are their 7 series gloves, but they have their Battle Forge, but they're starting to use more of these synthetics that really replicate the look and feel of leather, and it's supposed to have the same level of durability as a genuine leather. The only difference is with these synthetics is that it's not like leather where it's a real skin. Leather is obviously off of a cow typically, or goat skin, but it's an actual living, breathing skin. By that I mean you have to condition it, just like any other leather product out there. The big difference between leather on boxing gloves compared to any other leather product is, leather couches, leather seats in your car, leather handbags. A lot of times those end up getting maintained quite often, and they're not going through the same level of stress that a pair of boxing gloves do. So if you were to compare it strictly just on the material, boxing gloves take a lot more beating than like a couch would, other than you sitting on your leather couch. And then even then you might condition it with some leather conditioner, and you clean them, you wipe them down. So the same concept should be used with boxing gloves, and a lot of people neglect that. So it's really important that you maintain and you clean your gloves. There's going to be a link in the description box on the video I did on how to maintain your gloves, in which I cleaned it, and I used some leather conditioner on the gloves for those of you that have leather gloves. But that's going to be the biggest component of the longevity of your gloves. Now, the reason I have these Pro Series gloves, I've actually had these for, I believe, a little bit over 3, almost 4 years now. And these are their Pro Series gloves. I had these custom made a long while back. And just to kind of give you guys a close-up of it, you can start to see, I've actually maintained these gloves pretty well. I've cleaned them, I've used leather conditioner, and you can see right on the knuckle area, the leather is starting to break down. You're starting to see it kind of wrinkle, get little hairline cracks in there, starting to peel just a little bit on the knuckle area. But for gloves that are almost 4 years old, they've held up really nicely. You can see no tears or anything like that, and that's mainly because I maintain them. And these are probably one of my favorite gloves. I've had these in my rotation for the longest time. areas that you typically see the most amount of wear obviously is going to be on the striking surface, the knuckle. And when I'm mentioning that, these are areas to focus on when you're cleaning your gloves and you're putting conditioner on them, if they're leather gloves, is the areas where you do a lot of contact or you get a lot of sweat. So when these gloves are on, obviously the punching surface is going to be probably the most area of wear that you get, and then the thumb, because that's going to be typically up against your cheek or up against your face in some regard, and you're going to be sweating a lot, right? So what ends up happening is you get a lot of sweat, and sweat has a lot of enzymes and salt in there that affects the pH level of leather. So you can start to see just on the thumb right here specifically, this metallic red has really dulled out and kind of dried out compared to like the metallic gold on this side that doesn't get as much contact with sweat on my face that this side does. So you can kind of see the difference, how the gold is still pretty shiny and this part is really dulled out on the inner thumb, because again, this part gets a lot more of my sweat, and the salt in my sweat will break down the leather, especially the metallic. Another area you want to make sure that you maintain is going to be the inner thumb. So you can start to see that's wearing away as well. And what happens with that is when you make a fist and you close your hand, this index finger portion of the glove on the vast majority, if not all gloves, is going to rub on the thumb when you make a fist. So that constant rubbing is what you get that wear on there, and then you get the wear on the inside fingertip compartment. So those are kind of the areas right there that you see a lot of wear. You also see it on the palm side here. This piping is starting to kind of fray and break down. But I've maintained these gloves again, and you can see some of the bleeding right here. And then right here, where the Velcro strap goes around, you got a lot of rubbing on this, and you can start seeing it peel away. But again, you can really mitigate the actual wear and tear of the gloves by maintaining them. You can start seeing the metallic has peeled off a good amount. And here in Phoenix, it gets to, over 100 degrees in the summertime. So these gloves are exposed to the heat as well as just sweat and just stuff in the gym that you're working on, hitting the heavy bag, sparring with these. So you can see the general wear and tear. And these are gloves that I have maintained. So as long as you're taking care of your gloves, you should be able to get a couple of years out of your gloves if they're really good, high quality gloves. And you can see with these Sabas Pro Series, they've held up pretty well. One other thing is the foam is starting to break down. It's definitely a lot softer than when I first got them. So my knuckles have definitely kind of punched through. I say if I use these for like another year, this foam will probably end up breaking down completely. And again, that's completely subjective to how much you're using your gloves for bag work. If you're using it mostly for bag work and you're hitting a really dense, heavy bag, you're most likely going to break down that foam a lot quicker than you would if somebody's just using it for mitts, or if you're using it for bags that are a little bit softer fill, or maybe you're just using it for sparring. So you might not have as much wear and tear. Now, going back to a synthetic style glove, the big key difference between this and say the genuine leather gloves like those Sabas Pro Series is this is not like leather skin. So you can't really condition a synthetic glove. You can clean them. You can use like a mild cleaner, so mild dish soap with some water, dilute it really well, and really clean this off to make sure that you're getting all the oils and the sweat and the salt off of this material. Because with a lot of synthetics, I notice, because you cannot condition it like you would with leather, if it's exposed to heat and moisture, this will tend to crack a lot easier if you don't maintain it like you do leather. So I think from a longevity standpoint, you don't really have to worry about this, I'd say, cracking like leather would, but there's definitely not as much maintenance you can do with these other than wiping it down. You can't really use a leather conditioner. I wouldn't use Armor All because that can actually dry out the synthetic material. And then lastly, if you have any kind of synthetics on your gloves aside from the actual leather. So I have these Rival, these are the RB 2.0 bag gloves. They have mesh on the palm. So I just want to kind of give you guys this as an example. Now mesh, a lot of people don't like because of the durability of it. If you're parrying shots, your hands get really sweaty. typically mesh over time will start to deteriorate quicker than the rest of the glove. A lot of times when you throw these type of gloves into your gym bag, if you have any kind of Velcro, you got to be really careful, because what happens is the Velcro will grab onto this mesh, and when you rip the Velcro off, it'll actually fray this mesh material. So be mindful if you do have any gloves that have any kind of mesh. Most likely it's going to be on the palm area. Typically that's where you see, because they do that to kind of give you a little bit of that moisture wicking property in a glove, to get it kind of let it air out, and also probably to save some cost of the glove. But be very mindful that this area right here on the palm will usually break down quicker, because that's also where you're making a fist and you're rolling your hand over. So you're getting a lot more moisture retention in here. But be mindful of anything that's Velcro in your bag. Typically is going to be your hand wraps that might grab onto this, and when you pull it off, it'll rip this mesh material. So again, something you have to be mindful of with this mesh tile material. But I would say, generally speaking, if you're using your gloves every day, 5, 6 days a week, you're using it for bag work, sparring, you're hitting the mitts with them, and you're maintaining them. For a genuine leather glove, you should at least be able to get 2 to 3 years of good use. I've seen guys that have some Fairtex gloves, some BGV9s, that have had them for 5 years and been using them. One thing I also want to mention on top of the maintenance and the frequency of use is the quality of the glove. Now, when you get the glove brand new from the factory and you haven't used them yet, I'll grab these RB2s right here real quick, because I have not used these yet. I mean, I've used them on the bag, but I think only like a couple of rounds just to try them out. Keep in mind, when you get them, look for stress points, edges right here on the side where you might see some fraying. Any kind of stitching flaw that you might see that might be an issue later down the road, that's going to contribute to the glove itself if it deteriorates faster than another pair of gloves. So just little items where you see quality control issues. Is the Velcro strap attached to the side very well? Is the stitching done nicely? How's the inner liner? Is their inner liner torn and exposing foam, or is everything nicely stitched in there? So from a longevity standpoint, you're good to go. So keep that in mind as well. Just kind of look at how well the glove has been stitched in all the areas, if everything is reinforced properly, and also if the leather has bonded nicely to the foam on the inside. So those will just be indicators of how long the glove should last. And granted, there's going to be some times where you might get a pair of gloves. I mean, I've heard of some Clato Reyes gloves have longevity issues. I've heard guys, there's been notorious issues with the actual logo on the back of the glove starting to peel off quicker. Maybe there was a batch of Reyes gloves that weren't done up to standard, and they ended up sending them out, and you have some peeling or the leather's coming out. So there's going to be some anomalies out there. You're going to run into some gloves that maybe the quality is not up to par as the rest of the gloves that you're used to seeing. And not an excuse for the company, but just keep in mind there's always going to be a little bit of room for error. I mean, I've seen it with every company. I mean, I've seen guys that have had winnings where the stitching wasn't on point, typical of what you would see with a winning product. So do keep that in mind. There is going to be some of that. Just make sure that you bring it up to that company and make them aware about it and give them a chance to correct that issue, rather than just kind of jumping on them and going off on it. So always give them a chance to kind of rectify it. And then if you can't go anywhere from there, then, obviously you'd want to speak up about it. But again, just to kind of recap what we discussed, one is going to be the actual glove itself, the material, genuine leather, synthetic, the quality of the glove. That's going to be the base of it. Two, it's going to be frequency of use. How often you're using the gloves, how many times a week you're using them, and how long of a training session you're using them for. Three is going to be the maintenance. And I think the most important part for the longevity of your boxing gloves is going to be how well you're maintaining them. After you get done using your gloves, make sure that you allow them to air out. Don't just throw them in the duffel bag. Or if you need to, put them in your bag, and once you get into your car, open the trunk, put them in the trunk, and just let them stay open in the trunk. At least there's some air circulation in there to allow the glove to dry out. You maybe have a towel with you in your duffel bag. that you can wipe the sweat off of them, but just don't let the sweat linger on the actual leather itself. Make sure you wipe them down, and that way you don't have all that retention of the sweat and the salt that goes into the leather and soaks into it. So it's really important that you maintain it, and that's really going to extend the life of your equipment. So generally speaking, if you're asking how long it should last you several years. Again, if you are maintaining the equipment and your gear was from the factory built the way it was supposed to be built. Now, if you have a defective pair of gloves, that's a different story. Obviously, you want to address that in the beginning. But if you have a pair of gloves that are up to standard of what you expect from that company, again, several years should be kind of where you're at as far as longevity of your gloves. Just make sure you maintain them and they'll last you a long time. So if you guys have any questions or comments, make sure you guys leave them down below in the comments box. I'll put the link in the description box where I have the leather cleaner as well as the how to maintain your boxing gloves video. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.